death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. Okay. Who would like to read next? We have a volunteer. Verse 5 through verse 10.
Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. When therefore he heard that he was sick, he stayed then 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this he said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him."
Oh, I'm so tempted to just start editorializing right now, but let's go ahead and read the whole chapter. Another volunteer? Clint. 11 through 16.
These things he said, and after that he said to them, "Our friend Lazarus sleeps, but I go that I may wake him up." Then his disciples said, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get well." However, Jesus spoke of his death, but they thought that he was speaking about taking rest and sleep. Then Jesus said to them plainly, "Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him." Then Thomas, who is called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him."
Okay. Another volunteer? All right. Vanessa? 17 through 26.
Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?"
Jerry? 27 through 32.
She saith unto him, "Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world." And when she had so said, she went her way and called Mary her sister secretly, saying, "The Master is come and calleth for thee." As soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came unto him. Now Jesus was not yet come into the town, but was in that place where Martha met him. The Jews then which were with her in the house and comforted her, when they saw Mary, that she rose up hastily and went out, followed her, saying, "She goeth into the grave to weep there." Then when Mary was come where Jesus was, and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, "Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died."
Okay. Volunteer? All right. 33 through 39.
When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit, and he greatly troubled. And he said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, Could not he, who opened the eyes of the blind man, also have kept the man from dying? Then Jesus, deeply moved again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days."
Thank you. I think I saw a hand over here. Yeah. 40 through 44.
Jesus said unto her, Said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. And I knew that thou hear me always, but because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when he thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound his hands and foot with grave clothes, and his face bound about with a napkin. Jesus said unto them, Loose him, and let him go.
All right, 45 through 48.
Then many of the Jews who had come to Jesus and had seen the things Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went away to the Pharisees and told them the things Jesus did. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered a council and said, What shall we do? For this man works many signs. If we let him alone like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and nation.
That's where you cue the scary music. Okay. Somebody over here? Barrett. 49 through 53.
But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, You know nothing at all, nor do you take into account that it is expedient for you that one man die for the people, and that the whole nation not perish. Now he did not say this on his own initiative, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but in order that he might also gather together into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. So from that day on, they planned together to kill him.
One more. Wade. 54 to the end.
Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews, but departed thence into the country near to the wilderness, into a city called Ephraim, and there he tarried with the disciples. Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and many went up to Jerusalem out of the country before the Passover to purify themselves. They sought therefore for Jesus, and spake one to another, as they stood in the temple, What think ye, that he will not come to the feast? Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given commandment that if any man knew where he was, he should show it, that they might take him.
Okay, thank you. So we have a lot going on in this chapter. It's only about a week till Jesus will be crucified, and he knows that, but other people don't. And so I thought if we go through each of these little segments, we can see the overall picture of what's happening in this chapter. So one of the interesting things about the book of John, this is what I read. I suppose it's true. There are no parables in it. No parables. But there are lots of encounters. Jesus encounters people in nearly every chapter. And although they are individuals, each one is sort of representative of the kind of people that exist. Maybe not necessarily their personality, but something that they're experiencing. And so I may get choked up and start crying today. I'm sorry, I'm just emotional. But this is about grief. A lot of times people think of God as kind of like the Vulcans. How many of y'all watch Star Wars? Star Trek, sorry. Star Trek. Vulcans, what's wrong with them? They have no emotions. They have plenty of brains, but no heart. And what is kind of an underlying theme in the show? Isn't it to get the people with brains but no heart to have a heart? So we have a tendency to think of God the Father as kind of like that. Somebody who can understand things on a mental level, but has never experienced the things that people experience. And so, why did Jesus come to the world? To see what it's like to be the creation. The Creator created us, but He wasn't us. And so, if you care about somebody, you would like to be able to understand what they're like, why they're like that. I mean, isn't this why first dates are super awkward? You know, you were interested enough to go out, but once you're together, you're like, everything I say could be a deal breaker. And so, what is it like to be human? God wants to love us, but what is it really like? He doesn't understand that because He's never done it. And people can't become God because that's impossible. You either are God or you're not God. But could God make Himself be human? He did. And so He came to find out what it's like. And I said I wasn't going to leave this chapter, but I am. Hebrews 4:14 through Hebrews 5:2. Tracy, would you read that for me? Hebrews 4:14. So this doesn't count, but it's just something to add on to this story.
14 through what?
Hebrews 4:14 through 5:2.
Verse 14, therefore, since we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast to our confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in every way as we are, yet without sin. Therefore, let us approach the throne of grace with boldness, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in time of need. For every high priest taken from among men is appointed in matters pertaining to God, for the people to offer both gifts and sacrifices for sins. He is able to deal gently with those who are ignorant and are going astray, since he is also clothed with weaknesses.
Is Jesus a high priest? Is there a high priest in this chapter? In John 11, is there a high priest? And is he the same kind of high priest that we just read about in Hebrews? What's wrong with him?
He was put in place by men.
What's his advice in verse 50? Isn't it expedient for one person to die for the people and the whole nation perish not? What about verse 48? If we let him alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. So, Jesus is going to raise Lazarus out of love, and he's bringing Lazarus back from the dead, correct? And the religious leaders are going to send Jesus to his death because he is merciful, kind, and able to bring people to life. This raising of Lazarus is the straw that broke the camel's back. They decide he's got to die as soon as he raises someone from the dead. Now, have y'all ever seen zombie movies or like mummies or stuff like that? When you try to kill things that are dead already, does that actually work? I mean, if it's something that's supernatural and can't be killed, why would you shoot at it? Because it just annoys it and you're going to die. And here we have this little gang of self-important people who think that they can kill Jesus. He just raised somebody from the dead, but you think you can kill it. These people are so completely self-absorbed in their own importance and the way things are. You know, conservative people have one particular flaw, which is feeling like they are necessary to the preservation of the way things are. And they don't want anything to change, and dang it, they're going to make sure it doesn't. And I created a word for when I'm teaching at college. This is my own word I made up, patriolatry. It's making a god out of your country and worshiping it as if it was God. All through history, different religions, different empires, different kingdoms, whoever, have had their own national churches, and you're going to do what I said because I said. And I summarize it like this: God is good, God is great, put your money in the plate. That's all they care about. Do what I said because I said. I mean, like Nebuchadnezzar. Did he really care whether the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego actually were worshiping that statue? Did he care whether that was actually a god? What did he care about? I said you're going to do it, you're going to do it. Well, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to put you in that oven. Okay. I mean, what can you do with people like that? You either do what they say or you don't do what they say. But they're going to be dead, and so are you, and the person who can't die is going to judge you. And so Jesus must have been just a little struck by the irony of all this. I mean, it's not like he was there when they had this meeting to decide to kill him, but did he already know that was in the works? I mean, he already knew that. They tried to stone him like a short time before. And so let's go back to the story here. Who was Mary? Well, I know she's the sister of Lazarus. What had she done with her hair? When did she do that? When Jesus was invited to the house of one of the Pharisees, a guy who did not give him any water to clean his feet and who didn't greet him with a kiss. And here's a woman doing both those things with her tears and her hair. I have always thought, and people tell me, oh, shut up, Jeff. You don't need to speculate about things that aren't specified. Well, I can speculate if I want to. I think this was the woman taken in adultery. Maybe not, but to me, it would not violate the sense of things if she was. But whether she was or wasn't isn't important. Jesus loves Mary, doesn't he? It says so. Who else does he love? Martha and Lazarus. Does it tell us why he loved them? Was it their beauty? Was it their personality? Was it their kind Christian spirit? I don't know. Maybe one of them had Down syndrome. Some of those people are super sweet. Somebody that you just care about. There's like 4 people in the Bible that are actually stated as Jesus having loved them. And who are they? The person writing this gospel, Lazarus, Mary, and Martha, and that's it. Now, we know he loved other people, but it specifically says he loved them. And what, in verse 3, did Mary and Martha tell Jesus? The one you love is sick. Well, I mean, John's with Jesus, so it can't be him. So it's bound to be Lazarus. Do they know that Jesus loves their brother? Yes. Do they think that he wants to know that he's sick? Yes. Does Jesus go? No. Like 4 days he waits. It's less than 2 miles away. I mean, if you and your whole family, are like Jesus' favorite people on the planet, and your brother is at death's door, and Jesus can heal people, and he doesn't come, what would you think? I mean, like, what's the reason? Oh, stuff came up. You know, my dog needed a pedicure. I mean, whatever. If you're having a crisis, you feel like the people who say they care about you should come, right? I mean, if you had a big, actual, giant crisis, like you're in the hospital and you're about to die, and the people that supposedly care about you don't show up for 4 days, are you going to be just a little bit frustrated? I think Mary was in the house because she didn't want to talk to him right then. It's like, you could have been here, you could have done something, but no. Now he's dead, and it's all too late. Anyway, let us go into Judea again, he said to his disciples. And they said, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou thither again? You're just going to walk back over there where people are trying to throw rocks at you? I mean, maybe they thought, yeah, he needs to stay away because everybody's going to expect him to come and then they're going to kill him when he gets there. It's an ambush. And this is one of those classic, Corden knows that I like to point out, the classic things that Jesus says that seem to make absolutely no sense at all as an answer to what you just said. He does this to people all the time. Nicodemus, can I be born again? Like, how am I going to crawl back inside my mommy's tummy? I think I'm too big. Things that just are totally out there. And you're like, why did he say what he just said? I'm sure by this time the disciples are expecting it. They're probably just like, I wonder what he's going to say this time. Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbleth, because there is no light in him. What does this have to do with, are you going to go back there where you're probably going to get stoned? What are you talking about? If you walk in the day, you don't stumble. But if you walk in the night, you stumble. I mean, do we know why he said that? Does he know that he's got like 1 week to live? And that he has things that he still needs to do before he leaves? But do they know that? No, they don't know that. And they have no idea what he meant when he said that, but later on, I bet you they do. These things said he, and after that he says unto them, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go that I may wake him out of sleep. Oh, that's good news, Jesus. You must have heard something I hadn't heard, because I thought he was like nearly dead, but if he's sleeping, he'll get better. Good job. Maybe he had like a fever. Maybe they thought Jesus had cured him long distance. He could do that. He doesn't have to be there to heal people. But anyway, Jesus decides to just go ahead and tell him straight up. What does he say in verse 14? Lazarus is dead. Well, that doesn't sound like he got better. So if you're the guy who can heal people, why did you show up after he's dead?
He said in verse 4.
He said it's not unto death.
But for the glory of God.
Yeah, but he said it's not unto death. He knows he can raise him from the dead, but they don't think that that's what's going to happen. They think he's going to go and heal him before he dies, right? And I am glad for your sake that I was not there. You're glad for my sake that Lazarus is dead. Yes, but they don't know that yet. To the intent you may believe. How much belief are they going to need when Jesus dies in a week? Are they going to need to know that he can raise people from the dead? They're going to even need to know that he can rise from the dead, which is not on their radar. But, watching the guy that you've been following for 3 years that you worship as God get crucified is going to be a little bit of a faith test. And so he's doing this on purpose, kind of as a trial run for the way you're going to have to believe about the resurrection once I die. Because you are the people I picked to go and tell the rest of the world about this, and you're going to have to believe it.
I just think that's so important because they know that he could have kept him from dying. They have that much faith. Not anybody could do that, but God can, and they trust him. But they thought, well, that's too much, and he's been dead 4 days, so it's just, there's no chance you could do that, but you could have stopped him from dying, and that's a common.
I just thought about this. It's interesting. He left him one more day than what he'd be in the tomb.
Right. Just to make sure that everybody's convinced that he's really dead.
The words used in verse 4 and the word used in verse 14 are two different words. Two different Greek words for that.
Okay.
One in verse 4 has to do not only with physical death, but spiritual separation. The one in verse 14 is strictly physical death. There's two different conditions he's talking about.
So he's physically dead, but he's not necessarily spiritually dead. Okay.
Let me see some more there while we're taking that out.
Then Thomas says, "Let us also go that we may die with him." I mean, they're sure he's going to die. You're going to show up there and they're going to kill you. It's like, okay, boys, he's going to do it anyway. We might as well go die with him. They're going to round us all up and kill us too, so let's just do it. Let's just head on. Kind of like the guys at the Alamo. We're all going to die, but we might as well make a point. And so, good old Thomas. He's always the optimist. When Jesus came, he found he had laid in the grave 4 days already. It's less than 2 miles to Bethany. There's a whole bunch of people there with Mary and Martha comforting them. Martha, as soon as she heard Jesus was coming, went and met him and said some amazing things. Why does Martha know about the resurrection at the last day? Is that in the law of Moses?
Old Testament does indicate life after death. Not only would you say the law of Moses, but certainly David's, his son died, said, I will go to him. Hosea chapter 6 says that on the second day, he would restore them, and then on the third day, arise. So they, and the Pharisees believed in the resurrection. So there was evidence in Paul and in preaching in Acts, particularly chapters 24 through 26, talks about the resurrection. He says, that's what I'm on trial for.
Mm-hmm.
And the Pharisees support him.
Mm-hmm.
The Sadducees oppose him.
So in the Jewish culture, there are Pharisees who believe in the resurrection and spirits and angels. There's the Sadducees who don't believe in the resurrection or in angels or miracles. And there's the Herodians who don't care whether those things are real or not as long as I'm in good with the government. Which is probably way more people. What's interesting is how few times Jesus ever encounters the Herodians. Because really they just don't care about spiritual things at all as long as they're making money and they're not in trouble. They care about the political. Yeah?
He said that this is for you, that you will believe. That's why I waited.
Right.
Certainly the apostles had seen Christ raise at least 2 other people from the dead. The widow of Nain's son, and then Jairus' daughter. But it's a true test of faith until something hits us
Mm-hmm.
and becomes personal. I can state a fact and say I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
But until it becomes personal to me, there's the true test of whether I believe it.
And
This is now getting personal.
And Martha is being extremely reverent and extremely respectful, and she states I believe you are the Christ, the Son of God, who should come into the world. Who's the only person we've heard actually state it like that? Peter. And so she is convinced that he is the Messiah, that he is the Son of God, and she understands that Lazarus will rise at the last day. And Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believes in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. That is carved on old gravestones all over the world. Because when you are faced with the death of someone you love, the only hope you have is that they will rise again and you will see them again. And the burning bush, I tell my students when we talk about this kind of stuff, the burning bush said, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It did not say I was. So everybody you ever cared about is still alive. They're just in a different plane where you can't see them. And one day you'll be there too. So Martha is being taught about people who are dead. Don't worry about that, because you will come to them again, and they are not actually dead. They shall never die if they live and believe in him. And she believes that. But is Lazarus still dead? To all the people, he's dead. To her family, he's dead. To their friends, he's dead. Everybody thinks he's dead. He's in the grave. He's been dead 4 days. He stinks already. I don't want to go to a cemetery and dig up somebody 4 days after they were buried. I don't want to see that. And they're like, you're going to do what? They don't know what he's going to do yet. So Martha goes and tells Mary, who's still in the house, and she runs up to him and says what? Lord, if you had been here, my brother had not died. I don't think she said that to him while she was wiping his feet with her hair. I think she's a little bit upset. What did Jesus do in verse 35? Did he cry? It doesn't say he cried. It says he wept.
Define wept.
I bought myself a plastic Oscar because I'm really super dramatic, but I don't feel like weeping in front of you today. Do y'all know what weeping looks like? Uncontrollable chest heaving, sobbing, weeping. I mean, crying. You can have a little tear that falls down when you're watching a movie. I heard the Southern Women Say video, that would jerk a tear from a glass eye. Okay, well, weeping, if you've never done it, well, then maybe you haven't actually been that upset before. Why would Jesus weep? Doesn't he know that he's going to raise Lazarus? He loved him. He loved Mary. He loved Martha. He loved all humanity. That was the whole point of his coming. And does he finally get it, what it's like to lose someone you love? Even though he knows he hasn't lost him, on his head level, he sees all the other people crying and he can finally understand.
But I think he also knows that's what's going to happen when he dies too.
Maybe. I mean, he knows what's going to happen. But what did the verses in Hebrews say? We needed a high priest who could sympathize with our infirmities. And so, if he hadn't been able to care that much, then he wouldn't have been able to love that much. What he did for love. What did the Pharisees do their things for? Oh, they have love. Love for themselves, love for their own power, love for their preeminence, love for their country. But do they really love people? I mean, they might love their own family, but, what would they do for a sinner? Nothing. What did Jesus say in verse 43? What? Rebecca's such a sweet girl. This is like the girl that I have she's homeschooled. This girl that I have in my American history class, we were talking about the American Revolution and Lexington and Concord and Paul Revere. And I said, and what did Paul Revere say when he was warning people? The British are coming. I said it was just like that, huh? The British are coming. British are coming. Did y'all know that Nineveh is a cousin of Paul Revere's? What kind of voice did he say it with? Okay, let's all do this again. Lazarus, come forth. Come on. 1, 2, 3.
Lazarus, come forth.
All right, we have to let him hear. You're deaf as a corpse. And so Lazarus, come on, get out of here. And they're like, oh, come on. What do they see? I mean, how can he walk like this? He's wrapped up in cloth and he has a napkin on his face. I guess they had open caskets, and just left the part of their head open where you could see them. You know how we do at funerals and we walk by the casket. But he's all wrapped up and like a mummy, and they have this thing on his eyes. I guess if Jesus can raise him from the dead, he can get him to walk out. And what does he tell him? In verse 44. What did he say? What did Lazarus say? He didn't say anything. I mean, if he did, they didn't write it down. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be dead? I mean, when I think about my mother, I'm thinking like, what's it like now for her? Is she asleep? I mean, that's the way that people usually think about it. Are they sleeping? Do they know things? Can they see us? I don't know what they know, and neither do you. Do you think it would have been interesting to find out what Lazarus had been doing the 4 days he was in there? But it's not something we need to know. If it was important, it would have been written down. And I have never seen the Gospel of St. Lazarus, and neither have you. And, if I had been dead for 4 days, I'm sure that I would have something to say, unless I had been asleep the whole time. But Lazarus doesn't say anything, at least not that we know of. And another interesting thing, and I said this when I did that lesson on Mary. What are her last recorded words? I mean, she lived a long time. The last words she ever said that are recorded are, whatever he says to you, do it. Doesn't that sound like a mom thing to say? I mean, Jesus is going to give, orders, suggestions, commands, guidance, advice. And if he says to you, do something, what does Mary say? That's kind of basic. That's kind of the whole thing wrapped up there. Mary kind of came to the point when she needed to, and that's all she had to say, and therefore that's all that's recorded. We got Mommy's last advice. All right, and Lazarus doesn't say anything. There's no record of him ever becoming a Christian. There's no record of him living in some congregation somewhere. We don't know one extra thing about him. And we don't know why Jesus loved him. So he's there to prove that Jesus has the power to raise the dead, and that is the thing that the Pharisees finally decide is the deal breaker, and now he's got to die. Caiaphas' advice, it says in verse 51, that did not come from himself, that he was a prophet in that moment speaking for God, that Jesus should die for the nation and not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one the children of God that were scattered abroad. Is that what Jesus did? And the high priest who killed him is the one who said that's what would happen. The whole crucifixion was fixed in a way so that the people who killed him would be judging themselves. Not that they couldn't have handled it a different way, but this is the way they chose to do it, therefore they have no excuse. Jesus walked no more openly among the Jews, but went thence into a country near the wilderness and continued with his disciples. The Passover was nigh. Many went out into the country up to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. They sought for Jesus and asked, "What think ye, that he will not come to the feast?" The chief priests and Pharisees gave a commandment that if any man knew where he were, he should show it, that they might take him. What do you think about these people in verse 46? The mourners who were there to comfort Mary and Martha. What do they do in verse 46? If Jesus loves Mary and Martha and Lazarus love Jesus, then don't you think that Mary and Martha and Lazarus' friends should love Jesus? Do I have friends who don't love Jesus? Are some of the people at the funeral enemies of Jesus? They're snitches. And they might not do it to his face, but have you ever heard of frenemies before? Oh, hey, Jesus, so nice to see you. That was awesome. He's over here. Come get him. Who are they wanting to stay in good with? The people they can see. The people who look like they matter. The people who seem important. Is it possible that the people who seem important are less important than the people you just snitched on? I would not want to face Judgment Day knowing I was the one who had sicked the Pharisees on Jesus at Lazarus' resurrection. But what did Jesus say when he was crucified? Father, forgive them, they know. People are always doing bad things. Somebody told me one time, the world is full of good people who do bad things. Show me somebody that God doesn't love. Show me somebody that Jesus didn't come to die for. No matter how big of a wrath they are, that blood is open for them just like anybody else. And maybe today they don't get it, but maybe in the future they will. That's not our business, is it? We don't have to decide who's going to heaven. That's what Jesus and God do, and we are just supposed to show love and try to help them become better people. Aren't we? I mean, we can teach, but we can't make them do anything. That's their decision. So, any final thoughts? Yeah?
I think the prophecy is important and that it's recorded here, but it clearly shows that they misunderstood that he would die for the nation. You know, they were thinking like, you know, Rome will take away this freedom that we have here, and you know, the Messiah will actually help us be some world superpower or something like that. But so they thought they were helping God's plan, and in reality, God's plan was succeeded all along and always will.
His plan was for them to be guilty of his murder.
One for Jesus to die and save us all.
Yes.
You know, his kingdom, that he was a king, and they totally missed that.
Could even the people who hated Christianity become saved? Paul did. I mean, they had to blind him first, but isn't that interesting? Jesus is the light of the world. How much light do you want?